At exactly 2:17 a.m., every student in the dormitory woke up screaming. Not one, not two, all of them. Some sat upright in bed, frozen. Some jumped down and ran barefoot into the darkness. Some couldn't even scream. Their mouths were open, but no sound came out. This was a Nigerian boarding school, a place where silence at night was enforced, a place where fear was punished, a place where lights were supposed to be off, and students asleep. But at 2:17 a.m., sleep ended for everyone. What could wake an entire dormitory at the same time? What could make teenagers run toward locked doors, crying for teachers who would later refuse to speak? And why, years later, does this incident have no official record? Some students say they heard a sound first. Not loud, not sudden, a sound that didn't belong in a dormitory. Others insist there was no sound at all. They say they were awake before the screaming started, as if something had already entered the room. What happened that night? Why did teachers arrive and then suddenly stop asking questions? Why were parents called but told almost nothing? And why was the story quietly buried before morning assembly? This incident was never announced, never investigated, never explained. Students were warned to forget it. Teachers were transferred. Certain parts of the school were locked and never reopened. Yet the fear remained. Years later, former students still wake up at night, stuck on the same time, 2:17 a.m. This is not a ghost story. This is not a rumor from the internet. This is a real incident, remembered differently by those who survived it, and not spoken of by those who were in charge. Some call it mass hysteria. Some call it something spiritual. Some refuse to name it at all. But every single person agrees on one thing. Whatever happened that night was not normal, and it was not supposed to leave the school wall. What you're about to hear was never meant to be told like this. And once you hear it, you may understand why. The school sat far from the city, not close enough to hear traffic, not close enough for help to arrive quickly. Just land, trees, and a long, narrow road that disappeared into darkness at night. This was rural Nigeria, quiet during the day, unnervingly silent after sunset. The buildings were old, paint peeling from concrete walls, windows reinforced with metal bars. Dormitories built decades earlier, designed to last, not to comfort. Electricity was unreliable. When power went out, it stayed out. Students learned to sleep with heat, darkness, and shadows that stretched too far across the walls. Rules were strict. No talking after lights out, no movement between dormitories, no questions. Discipline was the school's pride. Parents were told this place would build character. Former students described it as tough, but safe. A school that produced disciplined graduates. A school that claimed nothing ever went wrong. But students knew there were places you avoided. No one officially said it. There were no signs, no written warnings. Yet everyone understood. Certain hallways were quiet for a reason. Certain staircases were never used at night. Some buildings felt colder. Even in the heat, new students learned quickly. If you asked why, seniors would shut you up. If you insisted, you were laughed at. If you walked there at night, you were never alone. Even when you were. There were also rules that didn't exist on paper. Don't whistle after dark. Don't call someone's name in the dormitory at night. And whatever you hear when the lights go out, don't respond. Teachers never explained these things. They didn't need to. They enforced silence. They enforced obedience. And most importantly, they enforced forgetting. This was a school known for order. But order doesn't erase fear. It only hides it. And by the time the incident happened, fear had already been living there, quietly for years. By day, the school looked ordinary. Students woke before sunrise. Beds were made tight enough to bounce a coin. Uniforms checked. Lines formed. No one spoke unless spoken to. Dormitory life followed a rhythm that never changed. Morning drills, classes, evening prep. Then night. Night was different. At exactly the same time every evening, the bell rang. Lights out. Bulbs clicked off one after another until the dormitory sank into darkness. Not soft darkness, the kind that pressed against your eyes. Talking was forbidden. Even whispers could earn punishment. Senior students enforced the rules before teachers ever needed to. They walked the aisles between beds, slippers scraping the floor. Their voices were low. Their warnings were serious. Face front. Don't turn around. Sleep. Junior students obeyed without question. Many of them were away from home for the first time. Some cried quietly into their pillows. Others lay awake listening, because at night the school never truly slept. There were stories, strange noises that didn't match footsteps, beds shaking slightly then stopping. The sound of someone walking where no one should be. Some juniors claimed they saw shadows moving along the walls. Not fast, not slow, just passing. When they told seniors, they were laughed at. You're imagining things. You're not used to boarding school. Sleep. But the seniors had their own stories. They spoke in half sentences. They avoided details. And they always ended with the same warning. Don't stay awake too long. Fear existed without a name. No explanation. No single event. Just a feeling that settled in your chest when the lights went out. A feeling that made you hold your breath when the dormitory became too quiet. And by the time that night arrived, most students had already learned one thing. When darkness comes in that school, you listen, but you don't look. The first warning did not come with screams. It came quietly. Days before the incident, students began to notice a smell in the dormitory. Not rot, not smoke. Something unfamiliar. Sharp, heavy, and uncomfortable. It appeared late at night and disappeared by morning. When juniors complained, seniors told them to ignore it. But then other things started happening. Doors that were locked before lights out were found open in the morning. Not broken, not forced, just open. At first, teachers blamed students. Someone is sneaking around. Someone is lying. Someone will be punished. But the incidents continued. One night, a junior student woke up to hear their name being called. Not shouted, not whispered, spoken calmly, as if the person was standing close. They sat up in bed. No one was there. Another student reported the same thing the next night, and then another. Different voices, same pattern. Names being called after lights out, always once, never repeated. Fear began spreading quietly. Students stopped sleeping deeply. Some pretended to be asleep all night. Others refused to close their eyes. Teachers were informed. They dismissed it. Night imagination. Stress. Fear stories. No investigations. No checks. No reassurance. Then came the student who said something was coming. A senior, known for discipline, not drama. They told their friends the dormitory felt wrong, that the air felt heavy, that something had changed. They warned juniors to sleep early, to pray, to stay close to their beds. When asked why, they said only one thing. Something bad is about to happen. The warning was ignored because nothing had happened yet. And in that school, nothing mattered until it happened at night. It was Friday, 13th of March. The time was 2:17 a.m. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. A storm was coming. Heavy clouds, distant thunder, rain beginning to patter against the tin roofs. Inside, the dormitory was dark. The power had gone out earlier, leaving only the faint moonlight through barred windows. Students lay in their beds listening to the storm and to each other's shallow breathing. At first, nothing seemed wrong. Then came the silence. Not the usual quiet of a sleeping dormitory. Not the hush enforced by fear. A deep silence, as if the building itself had stopped breathing. And then, a scream. Piercing, high, a sound that jolted every student upright. It was followed by another, and another, then dozens. Students scrambled from their beds, feet pounding against the cold concrete floors. Doors banged open and shut, lockers toppled over, pillows flew, blankets dragged across the hall. Some students tried to find their friends. Some ran blindly into walls. Some fell and didn't get up immediately. Teachers rushed into the hallways, but stopped short. They froze. No one could explain what was happening. The storm outside seemed to echo the chaos inside. Thunder shook the dormitory. Lightning flashed through windows, briefly illuminating terrified faces. No one knew what to do. No one knew what to say. And in the middle of it all, a sound that no one could describe. a low, guttural moan coming from somewhere deep inside the building. This was the night everything changed. This was the night fear became real. The chaos inside the dormitory was unlike anything anyone had ever experienced. Eyewitnesses would later struggle to describe it. Some said words could not capture the fear. Some refused to speak at all. One student recalled seeing a figure in the corner of the room, not human, tall, dark, and impossibly thin. It didn't move like a person. It glided. Its eyes, they said, glowed faintly, just enough to pierce the darkness. Another student felt something grab their ankle, a hand, cold and strong. They tried to scream, but no sound came out. They couldn't move. Their body froze as if rooted to the floor. A third student collapsed mid-hallway. No one had touched them. Their limbs gave out. They lay trembling on the cold tiles, staring at the ceiling in terror. Someone else swore they saw more than one figure, shadows twisting unnaturally along the walls, figures standing at impossible angles. One not human, they insisted, staring at them before disappearing behind a bed. Teachers arrived at last. They shouted instructions, demanding calm, but something about the dormitory made even them hesitate. Even they froze. Their voices faltered. Their eyes darted around nervously. Something unseen had silenced them. Students ran past them. They ran blindly, their screams echoing against walls. Teachers tried to guide them, but the fear was infectious, unstoppable. In that moment, the dormitory wasn't a building. It wasn't safe. It wasn't even real in the way they understood reality. It had become something else, something alive, something hungry. By the time the first hints of daylight approached, some students would not speak of what they had seen. Some would never sleep normally again, and some would never recover from the fear that had taken hold that night. Morning arrived slowly, but it brought no relief. The dormitory was a scene of chaos. Beds overturned, lockers scattered, footprints everywhere, some bare, some smeared with something that no one would name. Students huddled in corners, trembling. Some had bruises, some had scratches, some were unable to speak, their throats still tight from screaming. Others cried uncontrollably. Some rocked back and forth. Some whispered the same question over and over. Did anyone else see it? Did anyone else feel it? A few students, the ones who had been closest to the figures, claimed they didn't wake up normally. They remembered darkness, cold, a feeling of being lifted, then dropped. And then the screaming began. Teachers tried to regain control, but authority had no power over what had happened. Some teachers refused to speak. Some left the dormitory entirely, pacing outside, staring at walls, whispering among themselves. School authorities arrived shortly after. They didn't ask questions. They didn't comfort. Instead, they issued orders. Certain dormitory wings were locked and sealed. Certain hallways were off limits. Certain students were sent home quietly without explanation. And the rest? They were told to forget everything, to act as if nothing had happened, to sleep, to obey. But some students knew the truth. Whatever had visited that dormitory the night before was still there, waiting, watching. And the school, in its effort to contain the incident, had only made it stronger. By mid-morning, the storm had passed outside, but inside the air remained heavy, thick with fear. Parents arrived unexpectedly. They had been called under the guise of a minor disturbance. They expected a simple explanation, perhaps a fight between students. What they found instead was chaos and silence. Their children were pale, shaking, and mostly unable to speak. Some refused to meet their parents' eyes. Some clung to the floorboards as if the ground itself could protect them. School authorities spoke calmly, almost too calmly. No details, no apologies, no investigation. Students were warned, in hushed but firm tones, say nothing. Forget what you saw. It never happened. Parents were reassured, vaguely, unnervingly. No police were called. No official report was made. The incident simply vanished from the school records. Teachers who had been present were quietly transferred. Some resigned. Some never returned to teaching. Rumors began to circulate among the remaining staff. Some claimed the school had been cursed. Others said it was merely bad luck. But everyone agreed on one thing. Questions were dangerous, answers were forbidden, and the students learned the most important rule of all. What happens at night in that school stays in the school. The incident left more questions than answers. In the days that followed, whispers filled the school like smoke. Students talked in corners, avoiding teachers' eyes. Some refused to speak at all. Different stories emerged. Some said it was mass hysteria. Fear had spread like a virus, they claimed. A combination of stress, exhaustion, and isolation had triggered the chaos. Others argued it was a psychological breakdown. They pointed to certain students, especially the juniors, who had been most affected. It's all in their head, some teachers quietly admitted, but the fear, it feels real. Then there were those who offered spiritual explanations. They spoke of curses, restless spirits, and forces that punish those who disobeyed unspoken rules. These were presented as beliefs, not facts, but they were enough to terrify anyone who heard them. No two accounts were alike. No two students agreed on what had actually happened. Some claimed the figures were shadows. Others swore they saw beings that moved impossibly. One story, more chilling than all the rest, contradicted every other. A student claimed the dormitory itself had changed that night, that it breathed, moved, and trapped them in a world that existed alongside reality. Arguments broke out. Seniors told juniors not to speak about it, but the fear had already taken root, and so the truth became impossible to separate from rumor. Every retelling twisted it slightly. Every memory added new terror. One thing remained clear. Whatever had visited the school that night had left a mark. Among the survivors, one student stood out. Before the incident, they were lively, curious, always laughing in the dormitory halls. After that night, they were different. They became withdrawn, barely speaking. Eyes that once sparkled now seemed hollow, staring at shadows no one else could see. They slept little, waking repeatedly and screaming nightmares, often trembling uncontrollably. Teachers noticed, classmates whispered, but no one dared ask too much. Then, without warning, the student was suddenly withdrawn from school. No public record explained why, no announcement, no farewell. Classmates never heard from them again. Some say the student moved away quietly, sent to live with relatives. Others whispered darker possibilities, that whatever had haunted the dormitory that night had taken more than memories. For those who knew them, the absence was a wound that never healed. And in the years that followed, the story of the student who disappeared became a legend among students. A chilling reminder. Some experiences cannot be survived, at least not unscathed. Years have passed. The school is still standing. It still operates. New students arrive each term, eager and unaware. They walk the same hallways, sleep in the same dormitories, and follow the same strict rules. They know nothing of the night that changed everything, but certain buildings remain avoided. Dormitory wings sealed decades ago are still locked, their keys long forgotten. Hallways once bustling are now silent, watched only by shadows. Old staff refuse interviews. Some have retired quietly, some left abruptly. All carry the memory of that night, though they speak of it in vague terms, if at all. Former students, even those who graduated years ago, still feel the echo of fear. Some wake at 2:17 a.m., cold and sweating, recalling sensations they thought they had buried. Some avoid boarding schools entirely. Some never sleep without light. The school continues its routine. Smiles, drills, lessons, discipline. But underneath it all, the story remains. And in the quiet hours, when the wind rattles the windows and the dormitory is still, some swear they can feel it watching, waiting, as if the night itself never truly ended. Let's go back to 2:17 a.m. The screams, the darkness, the fear that spread faster than any rule could contain. We may never know what truly happened that night, who or what was responsible, why the authorities covered it up, why some students never returned. Every explanation is disputed. Every story contradicts the next, and the truth remains locked away like the sealed wings of the dormitory. But one thing is certain. Whatever happened that night didn't leave the school. It didn't vanish into history. It stayed with those who survived. The dormitory is quiet again. The storm is gone, but the memory is still alive.